Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm going to be talking about a new game called Verho Curse of Faces. This game was released on Steam on November 10th, 2025. Its regular price is $23.99 Canadian, or your regional equivalent, and it's developed by Kasser Games and published by Cobra Taku Games. The Steam page describes it as a dark RPG following the tradition of the Kingsfield series. It takes place after the catastrophic Era of Solitude, where masks have become the only protection against the Curse of Faces. Travel to the land of Yariv, find the source of this scourge, and face its dangers. So, obviously very helpful that it mentions Kingsfield right off the bat. This game is obviously incredibly inspired by Kingsfield. It's meant to be a Kingsfield-like. Kings-like? Field-like? I don't know. For people who don't know, Kingsfield was the series that From Software was probably most famous for before Dark Souls. They were first-person dungeon crawlers and still RPGs like Dark Souls. They had kind of the same stats as Dark Souls, the leveling up and things like that. But they were very, very difficult. Like I said, they predate Dark Souls, so the first Kingsfield was on the PS1, and they did several other Kingsfields and like spin-offs, like Shadow Tower on PS1 and PS2, and they were kind of unappreciated in their time, I guess. And I think it's only because of Dark Souls and Elden Ring's popularity that people have gone back to their previous games. And yeah, Kingsfield has been getting a real resurgence over the last few years. This isn't the only game that's inspired by Kingsfield that's a Kingsfield-like. I don't know what we're calling them yet. Possibly the most well-known one was Lunacid from a year or two ago. I guess it was in early access for a while, but I think it fully released at the end of like 2023. I personally have never played Kingsfield, but I love the aesthetic and idea of them. Dark Souls, but it's a first-person dungeon crawler with kind of slower, more methodical combat. I dig that kind of thing. Absolutely loved Lunacid when I played it, got all achievements in that, did a podcast episode talking about all achievements in that. And Verho had been on my radar for quite a while. I think Iron Pineapple probably talked about it in one of his videos about Souls-likes, and I was very lucky to be sent an early review code for this game. But unfortunately, I was sent it the day before I left on vacation for a week. So I did not get to play it before it came out. I played it when I got back from vacation, and I really wanted to get my video on it out, so I was originally planning on just playing a few hours and then recording my video and then finishing it off afterwards. But I enjoyed this game so much that I wanted to do it justice, and I ended up finishing the whole thing, and now I'm going to do my video on it. So this is a first-person dungeon crawler action RPG set in the land of Yariv, and currently going on in Yariv is the Curse of Faces, which is basically if you reveal your face to somebody, you die. And obviously this put quite a bit of pressure on the human race, and there began this Era of Solitude, which lasted for 264 years. And then people realized, wait, it's not meeting other people that kills us, because that's what they thought. It was actually revealing your face to people. So after 264 years, people started wearing masks, and they were able to walk around and interact with people again. So when people began wearing masks, it ended the Era of Solitude. But the thing about Yariv is, because it's cursed with this Curse of Faces, once you enter the land of Yariv, you're not allowed to leave again. And over time, you get multiple people coming into Yariv, adventurers, mercenaries, people who want to see what's going on in there, people who maybe don't fully trust this Curse of Faces thing, or maybe you're somebody who, outside Yariv, you've done some bad things, and you're on the run from very powerful people. It's not a bad place to run into, because nobody's going to follow you there. So those are all the sorts of people that you will find in Yariv. When you start up, you spawn in this spooky-looking forest area, which just teaches you the basics of the game, like your combat, your movement, and at the end of it, you get to choose your character's name, and then also choose your character's mask. And the mask is basically your starting class. And there's some really cool ones. There was one right at the end, which was like the Wretch equivalent from Dark Souls, which is where you start at level 1 with like 1 in every stat, no starting bonuses whatsoever. Now, if people know how I play Dark Souls, I love playing magic builds in those kinds of games. And when I played Lunacid, I also started as a magic build. And because of that, I almost gave up on the game because magic was so hard at the start. And I ended up deleting that character and starting again as, I think it was a Dex build. And it went so much better. And so when I started Verho, this was still quite fresh in my mind, and I was like, I'd like to do magic, but what if it's trash, and what if I kind of hate it? So I went for the Thief class, so I could start as a Dex build. And wouldn't you know it, magic is really good in Verho. But luckily, you are able to respec once you find a certain item and a certain location. You can do it decently early in the game, actually, so it's not a problem. So I started as a Dex build, put most of my stats into Dex, and then several hours in, I respec'd into an Int build, and that's how I finished the game. I was a caster with an Int scaling weapon. Very fun. Magic was really good in Verho. Would recommend doing a mage build. When the game teaches you the combat, you are not wanting to spam left click to attack. You can, but you do very little damage with just a light attack like that. The way you want to do combat is you hold down left click to charge up your weapon, and you can see it charging with this green bar filling up in the top left. And once it's charged, when you let go, you'll do a charged attack, and that does a good amount of damage, and that's when you're doing melee combat, you want to be charging your attacks all the time. You never want to be spamming left click, it won't do anything. But something very cool is if you let go of left click right as the bar has just filled up, you'll do a critical attack, so you'll do even more damage. So the combat is very fun, and it is quite varied because, yeah, you can maybe play a little bit riskier, you can be right up against enemies, do the charge attacks and try and let them go at the right time. Or if you want to play it safer, you kind of back away from enemies, charge up your attack, and then move in and let go to just do the regular charged attack. There's loads of weapon variety. I just played with a one-hand weapon in my right hand, and I tried a shield in my left hand for a little bit, but all the shields needed strength, and I just wasn't willing to put points into strength at the start of the game. But you can have a shield in your left hand. There's also two-handed weapons like spears and great axes. I didn't touch those at all, I just exclusively used a one-handed weapon. But you can equip more than just a shield in your offhand. Very early on in the game, you'll be able to pick up a torch, and that is just essential in this game because some of the areas are super dark, like purposely dark, like there'll be caves. And if you don't have a light source, you're not going to see anything, and you're just going to get swarmed by bats or spookier monsters. So yeah, you'll need a light source. There's also ranged weapons like crossbows and regular bows. I picked them up. I didn't ever use them whatsoever. I think I equipped a bow very early on because I was like, oh yeah, it's Dex. I didn't find any arrows for a little bit, and then by the time I did find arrows, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to use a bow anymore. But you could totally do a ranged archery build if you want. You've also got consumable throwable items like throwing stars or throwing knives, throwing daggers, things like that. I used them a fair bit at the start of the game because I think as a thief I started with like 8 throwing knives. They were pretty good at the start of the game. They did a lot more damage than just my melee attack with like a broken sword or whatever I was using. But later on I never used them at all. My magic and my melee weapons were plenty to get me through all the combat. You can equip up to 5 consumable items, and that's pretty much where you're going to have your potions. That's how you do healing. You have health potions and you've got mana potions. There's a lot of consumables. There's various leaves that cure status effects like poison or slow, and by default the controls are you've got those on your consumables and you press 2 to cycle through them. and R to use them. I found, especially towards the end of the game, where combat is getting kind of crazy, I found having to like mash 2 to cycle through my healing items to get to the right one very, very frustrating, and I definitely died a few times just like being on the wrong potion because there were too many things to keep track of, maybe in a boss fight. You know, I was trying to keep track of my health, my mana bar, how much my weapon is charged, how much my magic spell is charged, because you have to charge that up to use it as well. And yeah, there was just a lot of things to keep track of, so I would definitely like the potion hotbar system to be revamped. Maybe like a dedicated button for health potions and then another one for mana potions. Something like that, maybe like an inventory wheel where you could have like, you know, like numbers 1 to 9 or something, and you just set up which consumables you want on those items. Maybe that's diverting a little bit too much from Kingsfield. But yeah, the hotbar inventory system, quick inventory system, wasn't great and just kind of got worse as the game went on. I should say it took me 15.5 hours to finish the game. I did a lot of optional stuff. At the time of recording, the game's been out for less than a week. There's like no guides or walkthroughs or anything for this game. So I really did just stumble my way through things. I got a lot of pretty rare achievements. Like some of them have got like 6% of people have got them. So I think that's partially not a lot of people have finished the game at this point. Because my ending achievement, there's multiple different endings, but the one I got, 3% of people have got it. And even there's an achievement for killing that final boss, and 9.6% of people have got that one. So yeah, not many people have reached the end of the game, so there's not much information on the game out there right now. But I did some optional stuff. I got quite a few optional achievements, which felt pretty good, doing it completely blind. I did stop recording footage after 6.5 hours, so all the footage you're seeing in this game is pretty early to like slightly mid-game stuff. No spoilers, no video spoilers or anything after 6.5 hours. This game comes so close to beating out Lunacid for me. I absolutely loved Lunacid. Like I said, I got all achievements in it, but this game does a lot of things better than Lunacid, but it also does some things not very well, and the things it doesn't do very well do actually bring it down quite a bit. The biggest thing for me is, and I know it's only been out for about a week right now, but the biggest thing for me that it does is that some enemies, probably about half of the enemies, maybe more, just ignore collision completely. And they fly through walls, they fly through cliffs, their projectiles go through collision, and it's so frustrating to like be walking around an area and then just out of a wall comes like this flying insect that has no reason to be flying through walls, but it'll just like pop out of nowhere and attack you and like give you a good spook. When this first started happening, it was in this area called the prison walls, and inside were a bunch of like spectral knights. And I was like, okay, it's kind of annoying that these guys are flying through walls, but they're ghosts, I guess it makes sense. And then like a couple of areas later, I was in like a poison swamp area, and there's these big flies that, you know, shoot poison and things like that. And these assholes also started going through walls and flying right through buildings, and I was like, hang on, come on. They're flies. These are houses. Why are they going through walls? And it just keeps happening, like, even later in the game. Like, even towards the end of the game, you're fighting, like, these big golems. They just come lumbering right through walls. It's ridiculous. There's no way that's intentional. I'm sure that's just, like, a coding limitation. That 100% should have been ironed out before it was released. You can't release a game where half the enemies just ignore collision and move through walls. It's crazy. So that alone brings the game down quite a bit for me. If that gets fixed, easy recommend. The other issues I have with it are quite minor, but that one is crazy that it was released like that. I definitely found a few issues with lighting in the game. Sometimes I would like hold up my torch and it would just do nothing, even though it was definitely meant to. Sometimes you'd like hold it up against a wall and the wall would just be like pitch black. Just some weird lighting issues, which is a bit of an issue when you are encouraged to always carry a light source around with you. You know, there's a lot of underground, dark areas. Yeah, you're told you need a torch, but then sometimes it doesn't really work that well. Quite frustrating, but again, quite a small issue compared to the last one. I do think the UI is not amazing. This was also an issue with Lunacid, and it's about the same in Verho. All your weapons are just sorted into one long list. You can't like discard weapons or anything. Later on in the game, you're able to sell them, but if you sell them, you can't get them back. There's no storage or anything. Storage would be a good idea. But yeah, like I ended up selling all my just strength weapons, but then I kept everything else, like, just in case I ever wanted to respec. So whenever I picked up a new weapon, I would always just have to scroll through like 30 entries to find where it was. Same with your consumables. If you have consumables on your quick slots, you can use them, but you're also able to go into your inventory and use them as well. And again, just towards the end of the game, when you've got so many consumables, just trying to get through them is a nightmare. Same for all types of items that go in your inventory. I will mention something that I have seen on the Steam forums, is that playing as exclusively melee is going to be a really, really bad time. There's loads of enemies that really do just punish you for existing if you're melee, and if you can't back away from them and throw a spell or something at them, you're going to have a real hard time. I did notice this pretty early on, which is one of the reasons why I switched to a magic build, so I was able to get my distance from enemies and cast some pretty sweet spells later on. But I think if I'd played as, like, if I'd just stuck as my dex build, I don't think I would have had nearly as much fun as I did with this game. I don't know if I would just suggest playing as an int, a mage build, or if the combat does need some kind of tweaking. Those are my real big criticisms of the game, I think. Didn't stop me from thoroughly enjoying the game. Like I said, I finished it 15.5 hours in just about a week. And in fact, less than a week. I haven't been back for a full week yet. But it does make me go from like wholeheartedly recommending the game to recommending it with some caveats, like maybe wait for a few patches on that topic. There's no patch notes for this game, which is very, very strange. I won't go into details, but I found a thread that was titled "The End Game is an exercise in frustration," basically, and the person listed all these issues they had with some of the end game areas, which I agree with, having just done the end game over the last couple of days. And the dev responded. The dev's been pretty responsive on the forums, and they said, oh, all of these will be patched tomorrow, which is great. I woke up today, the game had been patched, but there's no patch notes whatsoever. So if you're not like looking at the forums, you don't know what's being changed. I don't know if like any weapons are secretly being nerfed or buffed at all. So yeah, patch notes are really needed for something like this, I think. The game has this beautiful PS1 aesthetic, quite low poly. You've seen it by this point. We're super far into the video. I probably should have mentioned the graphics earlier on, but here we are. You've seen all the graphics. They look really nice. There's a bunch of fun filters you can, or filtering options you can use, or disable, which I disabled all of them. You can have a vignette. Disabled a vignette. I don't want that. You can have chromatic aberration, bleh. You can disable that, which I did right away. And you've also got this option called retro filter, which basically just makes it look super pixelated. Lovely aesthetic. I don't like playing games like that. I like my graphics looking as clean as possible. Some people love playing with the aesthetic on, and actually all the in-game cutscenes, all the cutscenes are pre-rendered, and they've all got the retro filter on, so it was always a little bit funny going from my super clean visuals to the very chunky pixely ones in the cutscenes. But yeah, really nice that you can disable that right away. I loved that. You've also got a bunch of FPS options. I was able to just unlock it and, well, unlock it and then have VSync on, so it was at 180 the whole time for me, which was perfect. A couple of drops in some areas, but like very, very minor, not even worth mentioning. But there's a bunch of options to limit the frame rate. And one of them was like you could lock it to, I think it was like 18 FPS, and it was like the Kingsfield 2 graphics setting. Because yeah, the Kingsfield games did not run at very high frame rates. And I tried that for like 2 minutes. Very early in the game when I was just doing a little bit of grinding. I think I just wanted like one more level, and I was just doing a little circle of killing these enemies and then resting and killing them again. And it was such a shock going from 180 FPS to I'm pretty sure it was 18 that I almost died multiple times doing this very simple farming bit. So very fun to play with for a tiny little bit. Very funny that it's an option, but I don't think many people are going to have that on. I feel like I barely even talked about the game, and this video is already quite long. Like I just mentioned there, you've got checkpoints, bonfires, there are statues in this game that you repair and then rest at. You can warp between all of them right from the start of the game, which is absolutely lovely. If you rest at one of these statues, you recover all your health and mana, and all the enemies respawn. Not like, this isn't like Dark Souls 2, enemies don't respawn if you kill them too many times, so if you find a decent little farming spot, which I did in a couple of places, you can just kill enemies, rest up, kill them again, as much as you want. You're also able to level up at these bonfires, and whenever you level up, you get 3 skill points, and you can put them into the typical RPG skills. We've talked about them: strength, dex, int, etc. Whenever you rest at a bonfire or one of the statues, your game saves. If you go off and die, it's not like Dark Souls, you don't respawn at the bonfire and have to go collect your souls or something like that. If you die, you just reload your last save, which is, it's got its pros and cons. You know, if you go into a boss fight and you use a bunch of your potions or something, and then you die, when you respawn, you've still got all those potions, which is quite nice. But if you're doing a dungeon and you unlock a couple of shortcuts and then die before you get back to the save point, those shortcuts won't stay open. So there's pros and cons of that system. I found it annoying at some points in the game, but overall I think it does suit the game pretty well. It's very, very indie, but it's so good. Apart from a few issues I have with it, but yeah, overall I'm very close to recommending it, but I would wait and see if some of these issues are fixed, especially the enemies flying through walls. That one is crazy. I feel like I could keep going, but I'm going to cut this review short because it's already getting quite long. But yes, overall, I really enjoyed it. There's definitely replayability. I think I might do like another playthrough at some point, maybe in like 6 months, a year or something, when there's more walkthroughs, when there's like a full achievement guide, because there's 99 achievements in this game. And I got 63 on my first blind playthrough, which is pretty good. But yeah, there's definitely more I could get. I think doing, maybe like going and trying a full strength build would be fun at some point. Or even just different types of magic. I started with poison magic and then switched to blood magic because I saw on the forums that one of the spells was really good for endgame. And I wanted that, and it was really good. So yeah, blood magic's very good. But yeah, loads of other schools of magic: lightning, frost, wind. There's lots I could do in this game, and I probably will eventually. I'm sure I missed talking about something, so if you have any questions about the game, feel free to ask me in the comments, and I will answer them as best as I can. But there you go, that was my video on Verho, Curse of Faces. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!